Okay. You know, I sit at a unique crossroads of knowledge, and before you think I'm bragging, just hold on a damn minute. Someone is an expert in field theory, and someone who is, and I am by any estimates, an expert in metaphysics, especially monistic metaphysics. Translate ancient Greek, ancient Prakrit, Romanized Sanskrit. Like the definition of polarity. There's basically no human being on Earth that knows what polarity is. Well, a magnet has poles. You know, you take a magnet like this, and it's got a north pole and a south pole. Oh my God, I got a battery in my hand. It's even got a pole on it, too. It's like a polarity. It's got a positive and a negative. Yeah. Well, what does that mean? That means it is a source for release of pure potential, right? Right. Okay, so what does that mean? What is the sound of one hand clapping, right? This is Zen Kongan, by the way. Kongan is what we actually call koans. Someone actually asked me recently, said, which do I prefer, the head of a coin or the tail of a coin? And it was not sexual innuendo. My answer to him was, I actually prefer the silver of a coin. We're always looking at antinomies. You know, positive, negative terminal of a battery, the head and tail of a coin. What is the opposite of all antinomies? You know, Mother Nature, and I've written this in my book, Uncovering the Missing Secrets of Magnetism, which is free, by the way, on archive.org. It's in its 3rd edition. I'm working hard on the 4th edition, except I never get any time at all to do anything, even though I have hundreds of pages of notes to add to the 4th edition of the book. Do you even know the definition of polarity? No, nobody does. We're always looking at phenomena. I mean, the most fundamental thing, and all of modern corrupt science is built up upon our incorrect understanding of light. We think that there is such bullshit as photon particles. There's no such thing as photons. Mother Nature doesn't deal in particles. I mean, she's a hairy armpit chick with muddy feet and hairy legs, probably. Not that there's any such thing as actual Mother Nature. Just using, specifically, it would be natura naturans. There's no such thing as a light particle. We also talk about waves. Well, you know, it's both a particle and a wave. No, that's a misunderstanding. You see, that's a duality, just like polarity. Well, this battery has a positive and negative terminal. Let's just imagine this were a magnet. Okay, we have a south pole and a north pole on a magnet. I've talked about this endlessly before. Yeah, that's not exactly the case, because human beings don't understand incommensurability. One of the ancient Greek secrets that were held so dearly by Neo-Pythagoreans and Neoplatonic monists like Plotinus, Damascius, Numenius, Proclus, Syrianus, and the rest was incommensurability. Point non-specific incommensurability, or what we would call like the fractal, the holographic paradigm, where each part contained an image of the whole, is that sort of incommensurability means that there is no pole located on any side of any magnet, because in an absolute irreducible fact, if you cut a magnet in half, each half will have a north pole and a south pole. And if you cut it a million times, as if you could like a piece of salami, each little thin slice would have a north pole and a south pole. A magnet does not have poles. We're talking about a coin, we're talking about a battery, we're talking about a magnet. Polarity. We're all so observant of phenomena that we don't understand noumena. What's noumena? Look it up on Wikipedia or Google, okay? Noumena. The substrate. 100% of the visible universe is only such due to magnetism. Magnetism and space has no properties, and force are one and the same thing. We're talking about different ways of looking at the same thing. Space, force, and magnetism are all one and the same thing. The entire universe is governed by force and motion, inertia and acceleration. Those various modalities of interaction express themselves through capacitance, resistance, permeability, and permittivity. There's no such thing as superconductivity, for example. I used to play with superconductive sets when I was a teenager. What I asked for Christmas was a Dewar flask for holding liquid nitrogen. I had yttrium, barium, copper oxide, superconductor kits with neodymium magnets, and I'd pour in the liquid nitrogen and the styrofoam and watch the magnet levitate and think deeply about magnetism when I was a teenager. Only later in life to realize, through my deep concentration and ability to understand metaphysics and hardcore field theory, that there's no such thing as superconductivity. What that magnet was doing was extremely low magnetic permeability. In other words, the magnetic force fluxes would not penetrate a yttrium barium copper oxide when chilled to the temperature of liquid nitrogen. So, there's no such thing as superconductivity, and light is not a particle. Well, light is also a wave. A wave of what? Light, by definition, if we are to examine light by its very definition, I've talked about this before, is not even a noun. Well, sure, it's a noun. A noun is a person, a place, or a thing. Well, light is something. No, light is nothing. Light is an expression of activity, is a field perturbation. There's no such thing as a photon particle. I mean, anybody that believes in such absurd, abstract bullshit is a moron. This sort of insanity was promulgated ages ago. I made videos about this. I mean, if we actually eliminate what light does, light ceases to exist. That's like saying if Bob is walking down the street and Bob stops walking, then Bob ceases to exist. Well, that's absurd, isn't it? If you remove what a thing does, and therefore you remove the thing itself, then the thing itself was never a thing. In other words, you can only express something through activity. In other words, if we remove what light does, i.e. illumination, promulgation, propagation, if we remove what it does, its extrinsic attribute, then we also remove what it is. If we remove what it is, then it is not a noun. Therefore, by applying Platonic logic to light, we know that light is not a noun. Light does not exist. Sure, light exists. What's illuminating your fat, ugly face right now? Well, it's light. Well, what is light? Light is not a noun. We're talking about activity. Activity of what? We're talking about a field perturbation. Technically an ether perturbation. Antinomies. A magnet does not have poles. It has the inverse of counter space. Everything in the visible universe is only visible such that a 0-point non-Cartesian release of energy or inertia or counter space or a 0-point, it doesn't matter, you can call it 1,000 different things of which I don't give a shit, they're all referring to the same thing. 0-point energy, counter space, null space, non-Cartesian, hyperspace, all of that stuff is one and the same thing in reference to inertia or counter space, or the ether, as Nikola Tesla called it, as well as other people. Here's the little secret, okay? We think of a line as like this. We start right here, and we connect another point right over here, that's a line. You know, here to here, that's a line. That's not how Mother Nature works. The subdivision of unity doesn't exist that way. That's how a human being draws a line. I'm going to start here, take a pencil, draw it over here. That's not Mother Nature's line. Mother Nature's line is a point in counter space where the release of inertia has occurred, and this is a line. Okay? This is Mother Nature's line. This is Mother Nature's line. This is Mother Nature's line. A magnet does not have poles. Well, sure it does. A magnet's got a north pole and a south pole, just like this goddamn battery has a positive and a negative. Well, if you could actually cap it off, a battery like this is exactly the same as a magnet. Of course, it would be kind of hard to do, but technically it's possible. You could cut it in half and cap it, and you would have two batteries. You could do it again and again. However, you'd have diminishing returns on voltage and amperage. But a magnet's the same way. A magnet does not have any polarity. Pressure mediation. Everything works off pressure mediation. Don't you mean pressure mediation? What's pressure mediation mean? It means you pull the drain on your bathtub, water goes down the drain. It'd be pressure mediation. You squeeze a balloon full of water, you know, the water goes out the other side. You can never grab. It's that old saying that you can never grab a fistful of water. A magnet doesn't have poles. We can cut it 1,000 times, and each little slice will have a north pole and a south pole. That is that is incommensurability. Light doesn't exist. If you remove what light does, well, light is propagating in space. It does. Space has absolutely no properties at all. Nikola Tesla said this. If you think you're smarter than Nikola Tesla, then you, sir or ma'am, are an idiot. Space has no properties. Space is basically the fart of magnetism, the divergent field of the loss of inertia. Space is not a thing. Human beings in our stupidity have reified something that doesn't exist. It's like reifying a shadow. You know, it's like, well, if I put this here, the light's coming down, it creates a shadow. The shadow is a thing. It's like if you sit in a shadow, like the shadow of a tree, you get cold. Therefore, you know, that shadow has an effect on me because the sun is not shining on me. I'm getting cold. Therefore, a shadow is something. No, a shadow is a privation. We cannot reify a posterior attribute. Light is not a thing. If we remove what light does, i.e. illumination, i.e. propagation, then we remove light. That's like saying if Bob stops walking, then Bob ceases to exist. He just like vanishes into counter space. He vanishes into an invisible black hole. Isn't that absurd? Bob, stop walking. Boom. Bob vanishes. Bob was never a person if Bob did that, but Bob has never done that. However, if you do that to light, light is not a noun. Light is not a thing. We don't understand Mother Nature, the most fundamental principle. This is Metaphysics 101. Someone was asking me which do I prefer, the head side of a coin or the tail side of a coin when flipping it. It's like I prefer neither head nor tails. Both of those are antinomies of existence. Those are both phenomena to the silver of the coinage. There's even an old English term that talks about the coinage, whether it was silver or gold. It's like, what sort of coinage is it? It wasn't talking about the denomination or whose face was on the side of the coin. It was talking about coinage. So, like, what is the coinage of metaphysics? The coinage of metaphysics and the coinage of field theory is inertia and force and motion. Force and motion, inertia and acceleration. There is only inertia, counter space, non-Cartesian, ether, hyperspace, 0 point. I don't give a damn what you call it. It's all the same crap. Names are relevant. When you talk about true metaphysics, talking about names is bullshit talk. True comprehension is like, fuck the name. It's like the principle of comprehension is all that's important when it comes to wisdom. It's counter space. It's 0 point. Shut the fuck up. They're all the same thing. I don't care about names. Names are what humans do. They put a label. I'm going to stick a label on this shit. Good. You still don't understand what the hell it is. We're going to put labels on things all goddamn day long, but wisdom is about comprehension, understanding. You know what understanding means? Under. The key word there is under. You get underneath the surface of what something is, and you truly understand it. Kind of like we judge a book by its cover. That book sucks. Well, how do you know? It's got a shitty cover on it. Kind of like that guy. He's covered with tattoos. I bet he's like an ex-convict. Like, no, I certainly am not. So now that we know that by true hardcore definition, light is not a thing or a noun, a magnet doesn't have polarity, what are we talking about? This is the fundamentals of metaphysics, the substrate underneath phenomena. We see phenomena all the time, but we don't see the noumena. The metaphysics of comprehension is the inverse to the antinomies. It's like, well, you know, I care about the battery, the voltage output, here's the positive terminal and the negative terminal. Yeah, but what about understanding what the hell a battery is? It is pure inertia. It's like saying, you know, where does, what's the null point of sound? Is that silence? What is a dead battery? There's no difference existentially in this battery, whether it's fully charged or it has no charge. So what the hell is a battery then? Do we define a battery by being charged, not charged, both, or neither? What the hell is a battery? If a magnet doesn't have any fucking poles, which it doesn't, because you could cut it 1,000,000 times and each slice will have a north pole and a south pole, then where the hell do we come up with the notion of polarity? Well, the answer to that is that none of you people understand the definition of polarity as defined by nature itself. Natura naturans, or you want to use the word Mother Nature, that's fine as well. You don't understand what the word polarity means. Sure, well, polarity means it has poles. Well, you just restated the premise. You haven't comprehended what the hell polarity is. Polarity is space. It's a loss of inertia. But it is point non-specific. It is incommensurable. Or as the ancient Greeks used the term, aorismos, or aoristos, like the aoristos dias. The indefinite dyad, did I mention I did a long article translation on the aoristos dias in the Greek monistic metaphysics of Plotinus? Did I mention that? And all 52 translations thereof and all occurrences in the Enneads of Plotinus. Nobody teaches you this stuff. You don't learn this sort of stuff in school. You know? Were you ever taught that light is not a thing? Because light, by definition, is not a thing. It's a field perturbation. What light is and what light does is the same thing. Therefore, if we remove the attribute, then the principle ceases to exist. But the principle never existed to begin with. Therefore, light is not a thing. And there sure the fuck is no such thing as a goddamn photon. Every time I hear the word photon, there are 1,000 invisible angels that like scream out loud at the stupidity of humankind, including myself. Every time I hear the word photon, I have a shit fit. Just say the word photon. That is atomism. Mother Nature is not a crazy hooker on crack with a bag of magic particles. That is what modern physics would have you believe, that, the way the universe works is a bunch of shitty-ass particles all bumping into each other. We got muons and gluons and leptons and quarks and... Mother Nature doesn't work that way. Nature doesn't work that way. Aliens were to come in contact with humans and be like, God, these people are idiots. Let's get out of here before they pollute our brains. Thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos, drop a buck or two. Tell me to jump off a cliff, whatever makes you happy. This is Metaphysics 101. This was only a superficial examination of metaphysics. If you want me to get deeper, let me know. Some people say, oh my God, you need to dumb it down. And I go, that was dumbed down.